Shalom Aleichem. So the Sikha of Tisa Daled, wow, it's a very, very intense, powerful Sikha with lots of big ideas. It's based on three different Farbrengens from 3 different years. The bulk is Parshas Tisa Tavshin Lamed Aleph. Second is the Shavuos Sikha on Tavshin Chav Daled, and finally on Shmois Tavshin Lamed Vav. So we'll start with Tisa Lamed Aleph. When the Rebbe said there was a whole pre-thing before this Sikha. Rebbe spoke about that we're going to focus on something that is connected to Purim, because in Parsha Shavua it talks about Chet HaEgel. And in B'mei Purim also, the reason that there was the decree of destroying the Yidden was because they bowed down to the Tzelem in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, according to this one opinion. Even according to the opinion that the reason that they had the Gzeira was B'pnei Shenenum Sudas Shaloisa Russia, they had pleasure at Achashverosh's party. In this week's parsha, it says Vayeshavam Lechel B'Shasi that the people sat down to party, and then they started misbehaving, Gili Arayis, etc. And also on Purim, by the Suda was the whole story with Vashti Amalka, which was an issue of Gilui Arayis. And just like the Mea Purim, after that was Bitul Zeda, so too after Chet HaEgel Lech Alei Mizeh, there was this elevation. Mizeh, from this, aleh, you go up. They came from an aliyah. Like the Baal Shem Tov says in the Pasuk, that that's a time of difficulty of Yaakov, and from it will be self, that the mimena, from the tzara itself, comes the Yeshua even more than there was a chet. Interesting, if I'll just stop for a moment. The final full sikha that we have, Muga from the Rebbe, the full edited version sikha, is Kisisa Tavshin Nun Beis, which talks very much on the same Nakuda, that Yerida Tzarech Aliyah, and that Dafka through the Yerida you have the Aliyah. Totally, can't say recommended, but we should be learning that Sikha. It's a very, very powerful Sikha. That you come even higher than you were from before the Chet, Malim B'Kodesh, etc., etc. And the Rebbe spoke about after the Tshuva, they became the level of Bali Tshuva, which is greater than a Tzaddik. And the Rebbe says, this also explains why it says, go up, Atava Omashed Lesa, that you brought up from Mitzrayim. Why Moshe Rabbeinu brought up the Yidden? Hashem brought up the Yidden. So why does he say that you brought them up? And the intention is the aid of that. Like Rashi says in the Pasuk, Ki Shiches Amcha, your aid of that. Meaning that through tshuva, the Yidden became a level of Bali tshuva higher than tzaddikim, and they're able to elevate even the things that shalosh klipos atmeis. And this was dafka. It was poil also by the aid of that. In general, this sikha has very, very delicate, very powerful ideas about people who struggle in not only in things of klipas nega, but people who struggle in shalosh klipos atmeis, people who struggle with the real difficult things. There's a lot of very powerful ideas in this sikha. Then the Rebbe started asking questions on this Rashi. Then what the Rebbe would do often by Farbrengens is the Rebbe would leave the questions, go on to talk about other things. The Rebbe went on to speak about Likutei Levi Yitzchak from his father on Igeres HaTshuva. Then he spoke about smicha, what you need to have smicha for, and then mashlech manes, etc., a whole different thing. And then the Rebbe comes back to Pirush Rashi, alei mizeh, etc., and a whole different part in addition to what the sikha is. Then the Rebbe comes into the stuff that we learned in the sikha, and then the Rebbe finished off like this. After saying the whole sikha, the Rebbe says, that's why Rashi says the words ata v'ha'am, to point out that just like by Moshe, the tikkun, the completion of how Hashem fixed the going down lech reid was through going lech alei, so too the Bnei Yisrael, the tikkun, the fixing of Amcha, your nation, is that after that Hashem didn't say Amcha, he said Ha'am. In other words, it's no longer Moshe's problem, it's Hashem's nation. And Rebbe says over here, it's now the time to mention what the Frierdiker Rebbe said the story. That the Rebbe Maharash one time said that the world thinks that giving a bracha is a hard thing that only a tzaddik could do. But the truth is that every Yid can bring brachas through their davening. And that's the pshat atav ha'am, that you and the nation are equal. L'chora, it's not like that. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that accomplished the whole forgiveness. So how can you say atav ha'am as an equal, creating an equality between them? Nevertheless, that's the way it is. Because each and every one of us has Moshe Rabbeinu inside of us. Like the famous Tanya, that we can all have Yeras Hashem because we have the Moshe Rabbeinu in us. And each and every one of us, because we have this Moshe Rabbeinu with us, if we reveal it, we therefore have the power to bring bracha in our davening, not only to us and our families, but to every Yid, even a Yid that finds himself on the other side of the planet, which is just amazing, absolutely amazing. Then in the Sikha of Tafshin Chavdal Shavuos, that's where the Rebbe talks about the Torah Shalom, that the way Klippas were created was through the Shviras HaKelim and destruction of Tayu. And like the Chazal say, from here we learn that there was time even before the world was created, because Hashem was creating worlds and destroying them. So there was some sense of time. And then the Rebbe goes on to say that in general, it's explained that Klippa is just a lack, just like darkness is a lack of light. But the truth is that there's a chakira in Bagdeli Yisrael. Is it like that? Is darkness really just a lack of light, or is it an independent reality? And he brings an argument to say that's independent, because it says that darkness, that night was only created for learning. So the fact is that night was created. It's not just a lack of light. So too, in regards to the destruction of Tayu, which is a destruction only for the sake of building. But the building is from the darkness, because in the darkness itself, in the destruction, in the Tayu itself is something very positive. And therefore, even the stainness could turn into zechuyas, which is the nekuda the Rebbe spoke about, very delicate nekuda that the Rebbe spoke about at that Farbrengens. And finally, in Shmois Tafshin Lamed Vav, the Rebbe was talking about the nekuda that I don't want to have to do with the other cow, right? The end of the Farbrengens, the end of the Sikha. I don't want to have to do with a Paraveda Zara. That's Avodah Zarah. It's Asur Bana. I don't want to do it. I want to do Leparla Hashem. And over here we tell him you have to deal with the second par because it's necessary for the final goal of Hashemu Elikim. And therefore you have to deal with the Avodah of the par of the Avodah Zarah as well. And Adrabah, you have to deal with it before the Parla Hashem. Like Eliyahu Navi, you have to deal with it first. That Eliyahu could only come to Asay Tov after the Sur Meirah. And each and every one of us has to follow in that way. We have to help Yidden stay away from darkness. Even if you have to close the Gemara or the Chassidus book for a small amount of time, you have to be poil on the Zulas, another person. You talk with words that come out of your heart, even though it takes time, but it's worth it so that you can accomplish that Yid will be Sur Meirah. Not just Asita, Sur Meirah. And that's the idea of the story of Eliyahu Navi, that it was in the time Shabbos Aminah Sheyakayim. And we know that Dal Tadeva also made an effort of making Balei Tshuva, and we know also about Fili Kedeva, the Balei Lula, because this was around Yud Shvat. And therefore, everybody should get involved, and even the people who didn't get involved should get involved in reaching out to other Yidden, and not to see them in a judgmental way, but rather a tinek shenishba, a child who was nebuch